5 games left to go in the Sun Devils 2024 season, and I have a feeling they're going to win more than they're going to lose.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your shows. Stay in touch by following me on Twitter, RichieBrads36, and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It's game time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. Today, we've got a lot of conversation. First of all, today is a doubleheader. Later on today, we got to start talking some hoops because ASU basketball is getting ready to tip off right around the corner. So make sure you got those notifications on because that's coming up later today around the lunch hour for you guys. Something to prepare yourselves for. But as of right now, we've got some football to talk about. ASU is back from their final bye week of the year. The Sun Devils are 5-2, well above expectations of everyone. They have exceeded the 4.5 wins that Vegas predicted them to have. They have exceeded just about everybody's expectations outside of the most biased fans in the world. I mean, I said this team was going to go 7-5 this year. I did not think that they were going to have 5 wins before the last 5 games of the season. I definitely thought ASU was probably going to be about 500 at this point in time in the year, but that just has not been the case. Instead, the Sun Devils have done a really good job being able to grind out these wins, and they're in a great spot right now to win plenty of more games before the season is over. And that's what we're here to talk about is the final 5 games. You are visiting Oklahoma State this weekend. You are hosting UCF the following weekend. You are visiting K-State in 3 weeks, hosting BYU for the second to last game of the year, your final home game. And then the last game of the year, you are traveling down south to play that team. There's wins here. There's losses here. There's difficulty across the board. There's certain levels of importance for these games. We're going to start with Oklahoma State. With Oklahoma State, I am giving, for the difficulty of all these games, scale of 1 to 10. 1 being the easiest, 10 being the most difficult. Makes sense? Perfect. I'm going to go a 7.5 out of 10 for the difficulty of this game, and I'm going to put it the third most difficult game on the remaining schedule. I would tie it third probably, but I'll give the edge to Oklahoma State over who's going to end up being the number 4 team later on in the show. But this is a road game, and this is a big road game. It's Oklahoma State's homecoming. I'm really sorry, OK State fans, if you're tuning in a little bit early. I do not remember what the term is. It's like the greatest homecoming or the biggest homecoming, something like that, out in Stillwater. The vibes are immaculate. They are looking to keep their hopes alive of going to a bowl game, and those are on life support right now. They are 3-5 on the season. They are 0-5 in conference play, and I'm sure they would love to beat the Sun Devils to get that conference win that they are desperately searching for right now. And this is still a good team. Ollie Gordon is still there. Brennan Presley is still there. They've got guys on defense. They've got other weapons on offense. Alex Bowman's whatever at quarterback. He's not been good. Call it what it is. This is still a good team, and they have a great coach in Mike Gundy. You cannot sleep on Oklahoma State. I am not sleeping on them. I still think this is a tough game. In the preseason, I marked this not only as a loss, I said this was one of the 3 most difficult games that were on the Sun Devils schedule this upcoming year. And we'll talk about that in a minute. This is a very difficult game. Do not sleep on it. And for what it's worth, I mean, Oklahoma State has kind of owned this rivalry as of late. They're 2-0 in the last 2 years against ASU, which included a stomping in Stillwater 2 years ago. Is ASU ready for Oklahoma State again? We're going to find out. I don't know. This is not an easy game for the Sun Devils coming up right now. As far as the importance of this game, two things to me. One, it's a road game. ASU has struggled on the road this year. They are 1-2 on the road, and they snuck by Texas State for their lone road win of the year. The Sun Devils are a very different team away from Tempe than when they are at home. And by the way, they are a perfect 4-0 at home this year. They win at home. That's not a problem. They're 1-2 on the road. Now you've got another road game. You're fresh off a bye. Maybe that'll help. But this is still a good football team, and it's not a team that I am going to be sleeping on right now. I don't know how it ends up. I do know that this is a borderline must-win game for the Sun Devils. I know a lot of games are must-win. You've got to get this one to prove you can win on the road. This is also your opportunity to get to 6 wins and go bowling, ladies and gentlemen. Sun Devils have not been bowling since 2021. They have 6 wins collectively over the last 2 seasons. If you want to go by how the NCAA has seen things with them forfeiting the games for ASU, they have won 3 games since 2020, and they only won 2 games that year. So since 2020, they have won 5 football games in the eyes of the NCAA. That's not great. And you already have 5 wins. You're trying for 6. You're trying to go bowling in the second year of the Kenny Dillingham era in what is supposed to be a massive rebuild. That's huge on the line for you to be able to get to that 6-win mark. And I know that a lot of ASU fans have become really invested in this program. The NIL is going through the roof. The ticket sales are doing great. The student section is selling out. The stadium is finding ways to sell out. The Valley is activated. The recruiting is getting better. We got to keep it going. But this is a huge game this weekend in 2 ways. It's a road win that you need road wins right now, ladies and gentlemen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're 1-2 on the road. You could easily be 0-3. You've got 3 more road games to end the year. None of them are super easy. This is a attainable game for ASU, which is why my result in this game is going to be a win. Coming into the year, I said this was one of the 3 most difficult games on the schedule for the Sun Devils. I had this along with K-State and Utah, and Kansas was not far behind. Well, they beat Kansas, they beat Utah, both of which were home games. The 2 most difficult away games, Oklahoma State and Kansas State, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I had those as losses. And I don't know if ASU is ready to win those games yet. Here's a good chance to show off that you are. For what it's worth, this is another team that was supposed to be at the top of the conference. I had them in that top 5 going into the year. They have not lived up to expectations. So here's a chance for ASU, similar to what they did to Kansas, similar to what they did to Utah, to say, yeah, your top teams, we are the top teams in this conference. And you can take down Oklahoma State and you can say, look at that. 3 of the 5 best teams that were picked going into the year were 3-0. So there's stuff on the line here for Arizona State. But I am taking ASU to win this football game. I haven't decided on a score yet. That'll come later in the week. We start previewing the game tomorrow. So again, turn on notifications so you get up to date with everything that's going on. We'll keep you in the loop when I decide on the final score and all that good stuff. Spoiler alert, I do not have final scores for the remaining games either. Excuse me. I think this is a win. This is as close to a coin flip as I have for the final 5 games for ASU. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the UCF game and the K-State game. That's coming up next year on Locked On Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier than before for that live performance. Game Time Picks, they're going to filter out the fluff and show you incredible deals, only incredible deals, by the way, on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. The curation makes it easier to save on sports, but not just sports either. You can get it for concerts, comedy, theater, and other events. Toggle their all-in pricing feature. You're going to see the total upfront. There are no surprise fees at checkout. You can also get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy, so you know what to expect when you arrive. My favorite part is their lowest price guarantee. Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference if you can find tickets in the same section and row for less than what Game Time has. And of course, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you get that update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. We got 2 more games coming up here. We'll start with UCF. Going into the year, I thought UCF was going to be a much better team than they ended up being. And in fairness to the start of the year, they did look like a pretty quality football team. Since then, they have lost 5 straight. They started 3-0. They are now 3-5. They have a single win in non-conference play. That is not great at all. And in that time, they have gone through a bunch of different quarterbacks. KJ Jefferson, who was the starter at the start of the year, no longer the starter. They have now had 4 different quarterbacks in total that have thrown at least 1 pass this year. EJ Colson, Dylan Risk, I think, and Ja'Cory Brown. That's not ideal. Similar to ASU last year. 9 touchdown passes to 8 interceptions. The good news is they run the ball as well as anybody else in the conference. RJ Harvey is already over 1,000 yards, almost 7 yards per carry, and 13 touchdowns on the ground. They run the ball great. They do not pass the ball very well. It's a shaky football team. It's a very winnable game for ASU, and it's back at home. You will be back home for the first time in nearly a month. This is, of the final 5 remaining games, this is the easiest game left on the schedule. I am giving the difficulty rating a 5 out of 10. I'm still not sleeping on UCF because it's still a talented football team, but they are not playing for much right now. They are on fumes if they are attempting to go bowling this year. And ASU might be their last chance to be able to go bowling. They host Arizona this weekend. Hopefully that's going to be a win for them. And then they visit Arizona State. They visit West Virginia. They close the year at home against Utah. They could go bowling. There's 3 wins in there. Heck, they could win all 4. They could run the table somehow. It's unlikely. And they're going to need to find a way to beat ASU, but they have to go across the country to beat ASU. And that really gives ASU an advantage. We have seen this year in college football, not just the Big 12, the Big 10, the ACC. Thankfully, the SEC has been smart enough to keep their stuff regional for the most part. But you have seen that those cross-country trips are pretty brutal for these kids. You see Penn State go to USC. USC nearly pulls out that game. Miami goes to Cal. Cal should have pulled out that game, but the ACC refs had something else to say about that. You have these programs that you would expect to dominate suddenly aren't as good because of the time shift. That could be the case for UCF, who is going to pretty much the other side of the country, from Orlando, Florida to Tempe, Arizona. Quite the difference. It's a huge jump in the time zone. The weather will be significantly different, which maybe isn't the worst thing in the world for UCF, but it's a very different environment against a team that you're unfamiliar with. This is as close to a quote-unquote gimme game as you're going to get for ASU as they end the year. It's still not a gimme game. You can't sleep on these guys. They're still a talented football team. They started off the year 3-0 for a reason, but they also have slumped to 3-5 for a reason. This to me is a really good chance to separate yourself. At the start of the year, in the offseason, I said there are 2 classes in the Big 12, and then there's limbo. At the top of the conference was your 5 teams. I, at the time, said Kansas, Kansas State, Utah, Oklahoma State, and reluctantly, I said Arizona. Then I said there are the bottom dwellers of the conference, and I have not been right on any of those. I included Cincinnati. I included BYU. I might not have included BYU. I feel like I did. I cannot remember if I had BYU down there. I'm pretty sure I did. Colorado was right there. But then I had the limbo, which was like ASU, UCF, and some other programs that are scattered in there. This is ASU's chance to separate themselves, continue to separate themselves from those teams in limbo and push them up towards the higher part of the conference. This is your opportunity to seize control of that. Huge, huge chance in front of you here. You have to be able to seize it. I am taking ASU at home in this game. And I am saying win, and that is ASU's 7th win of the season with me picking that, which matches the win total that I gave them at the beginning of the year at 7-5. I will tell you, if ASU loses to Oklahoma State this weekend, UCF, look in the most respectful way possible, that game goes from a pretty good chance to win to a very good chance to win, because you're going to have a pissed off Sun Devils football team returning home for a home crowd. It might be senior day too. I'm not 100% sure. Homecoming is the BYU game, which normally is senior day. So I don't know if they're going to do both of them together or if senior day is just going to be the earlier of the 2 games, but that's going to end up turning into a big time must win game for ASU if they lose to Oklahoma State. Next up, going to Kansas State. This, to me, going into the year, was the hardest game on the schedule. That has not changed. Kansas State is a good football team. They may not be undefeated like Iowa State and BYU are. Talking about BYU here in just a moment. But they're 7-1. Their one loss in conference play came to BYU, who throttled them in Provo. Outside of that, they've pretty much dominated the competition. Even though their game against Arizona wasn't technically a conference game, they stomped them. They stomped Oklahoma State. They stomped West Virginia. They won shootouts with Kansas and with Colorado. They're doing everything that they need to do. If they can get BYU to slip up, if they can get Iowa State to slip up, they have a chance to get into the Big 12 championship game. They need some stuff to go right, but they also need to find a way to win out. And Kansas State has a realistic chance to win out. They visit Houston this weekend. They host Cincinnati. They host Arizona State. And they visit Iowa State to close the year. That Iowa State game, that's going to be one of the most important games of the 2024 season, regardless of conference, but especially for the Big 12. Kansas State would like to go into Ames with 3 more wins under their belt. They would like to go there as a 10-1 football team. And there is a very realistic chance that they do get there as a 10-1 football team. Back to ASU. Man, cold weather. I do not know if ASU is ready for cold weather games. Even going to Cincinnati, where it wasn't freezing, but it was very different from what you are used to and accustomed to. Like Utah and Colorado get cold. It's not East Coast weather, though. It was different to see them in Cincinnati. I don't know how big the impact was because I just felt like ASU wasn't totally prepared for that game. There's no denying, in my head at least, that the weather had an impact in that football game. Now you're talking about going to Manhattan, Kansas, the Little Apple, in mid-November. I have family that went to Manhattan Christian College back then, which is a couple of feet away from K-State. I visited that area in October, and as an Arizona kid, I was freezing my you-know-what off. It's only like 50 degrees, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I want to die. This is not for me. It's going to be a little bit cooler. I would not rule out the chance that you could have snow. You're talking about mid to late November. That possibility is there. And even if it's not, I wouldn't be surprised if this game is in the 40s. This is not going to be an easy game for ASU. It's going to be a very difficult game for ASU in all actuality. And I don't know how winnable this is. K-State is trying to prove that they are amongst the best teams in the conference, even one loss behind Iowa State and BYU. They're still trying to prove that they're as good, if not better, than those two. They are right on the outside of the Big 12 championship game right now. They need to win out going into their final game against Iowa State. This is a game they have to win. It's going to be cold. It's going to be really, really cold. I don't know if ASU is ready for that. That's such a difficult environment. K-State, K-State is honestly another really good football environment too. I've seen those stands. I've been in the stadium. That is a really good home field environment. And with a very good football team this year, it's going to be sold out. And it's going to be loud. It's going to be a ruckus. ASU is going to struggle in this game. I got it as a loss. I do. The importance of this game, I mean, it's a potential win over another top-ranked opponent. It would be the biggest win of your season. It would also prove that you can go on the road and you can win, but not just win on the road, but win in the elements. There is importance to this game. I'm telling you right now, ASU doesn't have a chance in hell of winning this game as of right now. They would have to seriously show me so much growth over the next couple of weeks. Like, they would have to dominate OK State and dominate UCF for me to think they even have a chance in this game. As of right now, yeah, that's a loss. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about BYU, and we're going to talk about the Territorial Cup as the final two games on the Sun Devils schedule. That's up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One last time, wherever you get your shows, like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Let's go ahead and round this bad boy up with the final two games on the schedule for ASU. First among those games is your final home game, your homecoming game, and against arguably the best team in the conference. For my money, as of right now, this is the best team in the conference. I am, of course, referring to BYU. Just like we all predicted going into the year, is BYU was going to be the best team in the conference. They were going to be 8-0 at this point in the season, and there's a chance that they just win out the rest of the year. Before they play ASU, they're visiting Utah this weekend, and they're hosting Kansas the following. They could easily be 10-0 when they come down to Tempe. This, if it's not Kansas State, and the reason why I lean towards Kansas State as being the bigger of the two games is because it is a road game in the elements. It might be BYU, though. BYU is the heavyweight contender in the Big 12 right now. They are currently the number 9 team in the AP poll. You got the college football playoff poll that's rolling out next week. By the time this game rolls around, if BYU is 10-0, they might be a top 5 team in the nation. They might be a top 5 team in the nation. Let that soak in for a second. No pun intended. Oh my gosh. You guys should make fun of me for that. That was totally unintended, but absolutely hilarious. Anyways, neither here nor there. This is a tough game for ASU. It is your homecoming. I said earlier when talking about UCF, I don't know what the plan is for senior day. I don't know if they're going to lump the two together or senior day is going to be UCF and then homecoming is BYU, but it is homecoming. It's the last home game of the year. It is a chance to take down the top team in the conference. Another game to prove that you belong in the higher part of the conference than the lower part. It would be one of the most critical upsets of the entire season. It might be the biggest upset in the Big 12. And it could shake up the entirety of the college football playoff. You're talking about if ASU beats BYU, BYU could end up out of the Big 12 championship game. It's unlikely, but it could. I don't know how the tiebreakers roll out. They could be out of it. And if that's the case, let's say it's K-State and Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. When you're looking for those next 8 teams outside of the 4 conference champions for who those slots are going to be. First of all, you're down to 7 because Boise State or the next group of 5 team is going to take up one of those playoff spots. Now you have 7 spots that are available. You would imagine that the runner-up in the Big 12 is going to have a better possibility than you to get into the playoff. You also got to factor in other SEC teams. You got to factor in some of the ACC teams. There's Big Ten. Big Ten's going to have some teams. Like you've got Texas, you've got Georgia, you've got LSU, you've got Texas A&M, you've got Clemson and Miami and Penn State and Ohio State. That's a lot of teams that BYU has to contend with. And the loss to ASU would not be the best loss for them. You prefer if they went 11-1 and they lost to who's left on their schedule? No one. If you lost to K-State earlier in the year and you went 11-1, that's a much better loss than losing to Arizona State. They cannot afford to lose this game. ASU, God, would they love to play spoiler. This is an exciting game on paper. You could find a way to host game day. If BYU is 10-0 coming into this game, and let's say ASU wins these 3 games, Oklahoma State, UCF, and they somehow pull it off against K-State, you would be an 8-2 football team. You would be hosting potentially a top 5 team in the country, and it would have massive implications on the Big 12. I don't think ASU is able to get to the conference championship at this point in time. If they ran the table, that's a 10-2 football team with wins over K-State and BYU. It would give ASU a really good chance. It's not going to happen. I would love it to happen. It's not going to happen. But by the time this game rolls around, this could be one of the most important games in the country and for the college football playoff. We'll see. As of right now, it's a loss. BYU is they're so good, man. They're doing everything well defensively, offensively. The funniest thing is, like, they don't have any, like, serious All-Americans or Heisman Trophy candidates or anything like that, but everyone's playing well. Everyone is just playing good football. They're executing what they need to do, and they're winning football games. I had this as a win preseason. This is a loss right now. Final game of the year, Territorial Cup. Let's keep it brief. There's a lot to talk about, but I don't think right now is the time to talk about it. I think down the road is a better time to talk about it. This game, BYU, I gave a 9 out of 10 for most difficult. Territorial Cup, 7.5 out of 10. 7.5 out of 10. This is the duel in the desert. This is the Territorial Cup, the oldest cup rivalry in college football. 1898 was the first time that the Territorial Cup was played. You throw out the record books when this game is played. Doesn't matter if it's in Tempe. Doesn't matter if it's in Tucson. Doesn't matter if for some reason it ends up being a neutral site. This is a throw out the record books. These two programs hate each other. It's politically driven. It is driven from a university standpoint, from a sports standpoint, from fans. It's over 100 years old. It is a huge, huge rivalry game. Nothing matters. I've said before on this podcast, ASU could be winless going into this game, and U of A could be number 1 in the nation, 11-0. I'm taking ASU to win that game. You want to know why? Because it does not matter. Doesn't matter. And it could be vice versa. ASU could be 11-0. U of A could be 0-11. I wouldn't count out U of A. I would because I'm a fan and I'd be biased, but it's a rivalry game. Those records don't matter because at the end of the day, you're just out to punch them in the face. Here's something that's noteworthy, though. Since the start of the new millennia, U of A has never won 3 straight territorial cups. They've won back-to-back. I think that's happened 3 times. I don't have it in front of me. They have never won it 3 straight since 2000. ASU is not letting that happen. No. Kenny Dillingham is going to get his first territorial cup win. And last year, getting throttled at home, that was embarrassing. That was also a pretty bad football team at that point in time from a talent standpoint, from an injury standpoint. That was just a beat-up football team. ASU was 10 times, maybe 100 times better than they were last year. They're playing great football, depending on the health, which as of right now, first of all, Sam Leavitt should be good to go for Saturday. That's huge news for their potential to beat Oklahoma State. As long as he stays healthy and the rest of the team stays healthy going into the Territorial Cup, ASU is the better team. ASU has no reason to not win this game. Kenny's going to want his first Territorial Cup, and ASU fans are definitely ready to take back the cup. We've never gone 3 straight games since the year 2000 without having the cup. It's never been 3 straight years. They're getting it back this year. I promise you that's a win. Final record, 8-5 for the Sun Devils. I have wins over Oklahoma State, UCF, and Arizona. I have losses to K-State and to BYU. To rank the games in order, number 1 most difficult, I am giving to K-State. Number 2, BYU. Number 3, Oklahoma State. Number 4, Arizona. And number 5, UCF. What do you guys think? Is this a fair ranking? Am I overlooking a team? Am I maybe being a little too nice to a program? What's your record prediction? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications wherever you're getting your content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we will be back later today around the noon hour for yourself so that we have some content for you to digest while you are eating your lunch or for your drive home from work. We got to talk ASU hoops. It is that time of the year. The season is tipping off right around the corner. We got to talk about the expectations, what to look for from this team, and we'll get a heat check on how excited you should be. Coming up here in just a few hours. I'll see you there. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.